Hi everyone, my name is Ty, and I wanted to thank Luke so much for the opportunity to present at this conference. And it's such an honour to be speaking to so many people who work in the care system. I'm the oldest of one of 7 kids with a single mum who was a drug addict and spent time in prison during my BA. So what was actually available for me was very limited. And I did my primary school education in Sittingbourne. I grew up in Kent, but as I said, we moved around a lot. But I did my primary school education in Regis Manor in Sittingbourne, my secondary school education in Westlands in Sittingbourne, my BA in Canterbury at UCA Fine Art, and my MA at Slade in London. And I'm here to talk about my experience in the care system, which happens to be a positive outcome, but I thought I would do that by actually talking through some of my artworks I've made that are a bit more personal, and I made them to process and understand my experience at that time. Now I'm removed from it. One of the first artworks I wanted to talk about is one I'm making now, which is the reason I can't be there, but I'm currently, this is going to make sense, but I'm currently sewing a giant doily out of cigarette filters. So like bits of it's going to probably be table sized. But this work references my grandmother, and there was a point during secondary school when my mum's drug addiction got really bad, and there was no electric in the house and there was no gas, and she taught us how to shoplift, and we were eating out of the bins behind Greg's, and my attendance at school went really low, and school was like my safe haven for me. But I was really lucky that I could move in with my grandma. But even being the best out of a bad situation, she was a heavy smoker, and she used to smoke indoors, and all of her furnishings used to be yellow and kind of stink like tobacco. And eventually she passed away from liver failure from alcohol and smoking. So this work, all the work to do with my nan, is made with Rizzlers and filters. I've made a rug out of Rizzlers, I've made bead curtains out of filters, and it's me remaking those gross furnishings super white and delicate and pristine, but using the materials that made hers furniture stink and eventually killed her. She actually passed away of liver failure just before I started my BA, which was really unfortunate because that's where I was going to live. I had a really abusive boyfriend at the time as well, which I won't go into, but my life it felt like I had this get out, and then all of a sudden I was back at square one, and I was made homeless, and I had just started my BA in Canterbury, and I was walking around Canterbury with like a bag full of clothes, and I was trying to find places to live, and I was sofa surfing around friends' houses, and then I approached a university for the first time, and I asked them what type of support I could have, and then all of a sudden this world of support opened up that I had no idea about. And I was working with these people who work with people who are in care. They got me a flat and got me my first job, which was great, but the first day of my job I didn't even have enough money for the bus because I spent all of my money on a black polo. So I went to the local water fountain and I got £1.20 out of the water fountain to pay for my first shift. So at that time, it's really bizarre for me because I was actually really hopeful and happy to be at art school and doing all this stuff, and I was like, oh my god, things are great, it's so much better than they have been. And I just wasn't aware, I was just surviving, you know. And I think the people in the situation that I was in, if I could give them any advice, it's like understanding that there is help available. Because for me, it just took me so long to realise that, and that was such a shame. One of the first artworks I made where people actually started to take me seriously was just after my BA. I was living in Margate in Kent, and I was working at Aldi at the time, and I wanted to make an artwork about this idea of underpaid work and also people not having food and food banks and things like that, and I got funding to fill up a room with unopened tins of beans so you could walk on top of them. There was 6,664 tins of baked beans, and I got £2.5 grand funding for an art festival, but only £60 of that was my pay. The rest of it bought the beans. And after the show, I donated them all to food banks in the local area, and they fed the homeless for over a year. I actually met a lady who works there, and she was like, "You're the bean guy. I've been giving out those beans for a year." And it was such a full circle moment, because growing up, I actually used to eat at food banks. So it was so crazy for me to get financial funding to do a project to then give back to food banks. Next artwork I wanted to talk about, I made during my MA, and I'm going to talk about two works, and they're both about my relationship with my dad. And he passed away a couple of years ago, and while I went to his wake, I saw a photo of him holding me as a baby, and it's the first time I ever saw this photo. I had this sudden idea to cover a fridge freezer in 1,000 fridge magnets, because I just thought the labour of me cutting out every single one of these photos, which had so much power, somehow that would actually eliminate the power. And I think after I made this artwork, it really, it was definitely part of the grieving process. When you know the story behind it and the reason I made it, it then has that kind of dark humour. And I think that's a lot of people in the care system or going through bad experiences and trauma when they're younger. Humour is a way of dealing with it. So another artwork I want to talk about is I chopped up a toaster like a loaf of bread, and I put it next to a photo of that cliche farmer's white cut loaf on a chopping board, which to me references this kind of idealistic family, this like stable upbringing of like mum and dad and 2 kids. And for me, chopping up this toaster is a commentary on that, because it's talking about the grit and dirt and rubble and debris of my experience growing up, and the things I had to deal with at the time. They weren't pretty, they weren't picturesque, they were raw. You know, it's so surprising to me how long it took me to understand that my situation was even bad. We were in this bubble, this like family bubble, and this like mutual delusion that everything was fine. But the people in education, that was always my safe space, because I felt like I was treated and spoke to like a real person and a human, and I could talk about what I was interested in. So, you know, I think humanity when dealing with care leavers is super, super important, because they're not stupid. They might be ignorant, but they really, with that survival comes a super social intelligence, and just giving them the space and, you know, platform to actually flourish that is like so important, or it really was for me particularly. So the next thing I feel like talking about is an artwork I made about the fact that I'm a drag queen. So I'm a drag queen part-time. I'm also a homosexual. But I thought I would talk about this because even though I was in care and I had all these issues growing up and no real role models, while dealing with all of that, I also had to deal with these things. But this artwork is a pair of shoes that I used to wear in school, and I've decorated them along the seams with fake eyelashes. So it's almost the shoes I wish I could have worn while I was in school, because even though I knew deep down I was gay, I didn't have the confidence to express that until I left sixth form. I think the point I'm trying to make out of this is I've been so incredibly lucky to have the right people around me to let me know that I can use these traumatic experiences for my benefit. And I was able to profitize and monetize and live off artwork I'm making about the fact that I'm gay, or about the fact about my parents, or even my dyslexia. For me, education was probably the most important thing growing up, to give me the self-belief and the understanding of the possibilities that I had to hand. And it was for people like you and the tutors I had and my chosen family and all of those people around me that enabled me to get from a dangerous, impoverished situation into a situation that is now stable and safe, and I can be ambitious, and I can do all of these things I never even knew was possible for me. Like I remember saying when I lived in Margate, the moment I've made it as an artist is when I can afford to buy a dishwasher. You know, that's how low my ambition was. And then I made £80 and I bought a dishwasher on Facebook and I installed it and I looked at it and I thought, oh, is that it? I've got to up my game. And it feels like my life has always been like slowly upping my own expectations on what was possible. Yeah, I think understanding that people in the care system, even though they're going through maybe a really horrific time that you may or may not be able to relate to, they're also ambitious, young, creative, excited, intelligent people who just want to be spoken to like humans, and giving them the ability to understand that that situation isn't forever, or even, you know, for them to understand that they're not alone in that situation is super, super important. And I wanted to say thank you so much for your time and listening to this presentation. And I hope you've enjoyed the conference and have a safe journey home. I really hope that this helped in any way.